It's summer 1944. German general staff officers are gathered in a war room studying maps of France. Allied forces have broken out of Normandy and are racing eastward. But the German generals aren't panicking. In fact, they're smiling. Some are even laughing. Let them advance, one says confidently. The Americans will run out of fuel within 2 weeks. Their supply lines will collapse. Basic logistics. They cannot possibly sustain this. Another German officer chuckles. Americans can build tanks, yes, but can they organize their delivery? They are shopkeepers, not soldiers. Their logistics will be chaos. The room nods in agreement. German military doctrine, refined over decades, says rapid advances over such distances are impossible. Supply lines will overextend. The American advance will grind to a halt. Then Germany will counterattack. They were so confident, so certain of their superiority, so wrong. Because at that very moment, 6,000 American soldiers, most of them black men driving trucks, were creating the largest, fastest, most efficient supply operation in military history. They called it the Red Ball Express, and it would deliver 12,500 tons of supplies every single day across 400 miles of war-torn France. German generals laughed at American logistics. Then the Red Ball Express fueled Patton's blitz across France, and the laughing stopped. Forever. To understand why Germans were so confident, you need to understand their perspective. The German military had pioneered blitzkrieg, lightning war. They had overrun Poland in weeks, France in 6 weeks, and pushed deep into the Soviet Union. German staff college officers studied logistics like a science. They prided themselves on efficiency, organization, and military excellence. When they analyzed American capabilities, they saw weaknesses everywhere. Intelligence reports described American soldiers as undisciplined civilians in uniform. Former shopkeepers, farmers, factory workers, not professional soldiers. German officers believed Americans lacked the organizational culture necessary for complex military operations. Logistics, they were certain, would be America's Achilles heel. The math seemed to prove them right. After the D-Day landings, Allied supply lines ran from Normandy beaches through limited ports, across hundreds of miles of French countryside whose infrastructure had been destroyed by years of war and Allied bombing. Moving supplies that distance required. Functioning ports, most were destroyed or German-held. Railroads, bombed to prevent German use. Trucks, thousands needed. Fuel, for the trucks carrying fuel, a logistics puzzle. Organization, coordinating thousands of vehicles. Discipline, maintaining schedules under combat conditions. German planners calculated it was impossible. The Americans would advance maybe 150 miles before supply problems forced them to halt. That would give Germany time to regroup, establish new defensive lines, and potentially negotiate a settlement. So when American armies broke out of Normandy in late July 1944 and began racing across France, German commanders weren't alarmed. They were confident. Let the Americans overextend themselves. Logistics would defeat them where German arms could not. They were about to learn a very expensive lesson August. In 1944, General George S. Patton's Third Army is unleashed, and unleashed is the right word. Patton's armored divisions are advancing 30, 40, sometimes 50 miles per day. They're not fighting, they're racing. German forces are retreating so fast that Third Army is chasing them across France like a pursuing wolf pack. But there's a problem. Actually, several problems. Problem 1, Patton's tanks drink fuel like it's water. A single armored division consumes 300,000 gallons of gasoline per day. Patton has multiple armored divisions. Do the math. His army needs millions of gallons of fuel daily. Problem 2, they're now 400 miles from their supply bases in Normandy. 400 miles of roads torn up by years of war. Bridges destroyed, no functioning railroads. Problem 3, the ports that could handle cargo ships are either still in German hands or so damaged they're barely functional. Problem 4, every conventional logistics model says this is impossible. Armies can't sustain advances at this speed over such distances. Can't be done. But Patton doesn't care about conventional models. He's quoted as saying, "My men can eat their belts, but my tanks have got to have gas." Someone had to get him that gas. Enter the Red Ball Express at August 25, 1944. The U.S. Army activates the Red Ball Express, a dedicated truck convoy. System designed to do what experts said couldn't be done. The concept was simple: dedicate entire highways to military supply convoys. Mark trucks with red balls so everyone knows they have priority. Send them in continuous streams from supply depots to front lines and back. Operate 24 hours a day. Don't stop. The execution was anything but simple. At its peak, the Red Ball Express operated nearly 6,000 trucks simultaneously. 6,000 trucks, all moving continuously, day and night, across 400, 700-mile round trips, delivering supplies to armies advancing so fast the delivery destinations changed daily. The trucks were mostly GMC Deuce and a half, 2.5-ton cargo vehicles, not fancy, not sophisticated, but rugged, reliable, and American factories were producing them by the hundreds of thousands. The routes were marked. Military police controlled traffic. Repair stations were positioned every 25 miles. Fuel dumps were strategically placed. Supply prioritization systems determined what went where. But here's what made it truly remarkable. The drivers, approximately 75% of Red Ball, Express drivers were African-American soldiers serving in segregated quartermaster truck companies. These men, facing racism, even while performing crucial war service, drove those trucks under conditions that would break most people. 20-hour shifts were common, though regulations said 12 was the maximum. Drivers would grab a few hours of sleep at the wheel or pulled over on the roadside, then get back on the road. They drove in blackout conditions at night, no headlights, because German aircraft were hunting for convoys. They removed governors from engines to increase speed beyond safety limits. They drank coffee constantly to stay awake. They ate while driving, one hand on the wheel. Many simply refused to stop. There was pride in keeping Patton's boys supplied. Competition developed between units for fastest delivery times. These undisciplined American shopkeepers, the Germans mocked, were working harder than anyone thought humanly possible. And the danger was real. German aircraft strafed convoys. Exhaustion caused accidents, fatal ones. Mechanical failures at high speeds killed drivers. 432 men died keeping the Red Ball Express running. Countless more were injured, but they kept driving. Day after day, night after night, 12,500 tons of supplies delivered every single day at peak operations. Patton's tanks never ran out of gas. Fueled by the Red Ball Express, Patton's Third Army did something military historians thought impossible. Between August and September 1944, Third Army advanced 600 miles in 30 days. 600 miles in 1 month. While fighting, they liberated northern France at speeds that exceeded the German Blitzkrieg advance of 1940. They overran German positions before defenders could even set up. They captured thousands of prisoners. They reached the German border by mid-September, and they never stopped for supplies. German commanders were stunned. Their intelligence had assured them this was impossible. American logistics would collapse. The advance would stall. But it didn't. Reconnaissance pilots reported endless convoys of American trucks moving day and night. Ground observers reported supply dumps appearing overnight in locations that had been empty fields the day before. Captured American soldiers had full ammunition, adequate food, and fuel for their vehicles. German reports back to headquarters changed their tone. American logistics capability greatly underestimated. Supply organization rivals or exceeds our own. Truck convoy system unprecedented in scale and efficiency. American industrial capacity translates directly to battlefield advantage. The German General Staff, which had laughed at American logistics, was now writing panicked assessments about American logistical superiority. By September 1944, German defensive planning no longer assumed American advances would be limited by supply problems. They now assumed Americans could go anywhere, anytime, and would have the supplies to stay there. The psychological impact was devastating. German soldiers knew, even if we stop them today, they'll have fuel, ammunition, and reinforcements tomorrow. We won't. Let's look at what the Red Ball Express actually accomplished. 2 days of operation. August 25th, November 16th, 1944, 112,000 tons of supplies delivered total, 12,500 tons delivered daily on average, at peak 89 million miles, driven collectively by all vehicles. Think about that. 12,500 tons per day. That's enough gasoline to fill an Olympic swimming pool every day. Enough ammunition for constant combat operations. Enough food to feed hundreds of thousands of soldiers. All delivered across war-torn France, where the infrastructure had been systematically destroyed, and it was done by soldiers the Germans assumed would be disorganized and inefficient. The irony is perfect. The nation Germans, marked as shopkeepers and mechanics, used exactly those skills: practical organization, mechanical know-how, logistics management, to defeat them. The Red Ball Express proved several things. It proved that logistics wins wars as surely as tactics and strategy. It proved that American industrial capacity, when properly organized, was unstoppable. It proved that the racist assumptions about what black soldiers could accomplish were lies. The men who drove those trucks performed one of the war's most crucial operations and received almost no recognition for decades. Because here's the shameful truth. These men came home to a segregated America that still wouldn't let them eat at the same lunch counters as white Americans. They had kept Patton's army rolling across France, had worked themselves to exhaustion, had died to defeat fascism, and came home to Jim Crow. Recognition came slowly. Too slowly. The Red Ball Express drivers who survived often went decades without acknowledgement of what they'd accomplished. But military historians know, without the Red Ball Express, Patton's advance stops. Without that advance, the war potentially lasts months longer. Without those black soldiers driving trucks 20 hours a day under German air attack, history changes. So let's return to that German war room where generals were laughing about American logistics. Imagine them, a few months later, looking at the same map. Now it shows American armies at the German border, cities liberated, German forces in full retreat, supply lines that never broke, an advance that never stopped. No one is laughing anymore. One of them might say quietly, "We were wrong about their logistics, about their organization, about them." Because that's the ultimate lesson of the Red Ball Express. Never underestimate your opponent. Not their courage, not their capability, and certainly not their logistics. The Germans thought warfare was about tactics and strategy and military excellence. They thought Americans were disorganized amateurs who could build tanks but couldn't deliver them effectively. They were wrong. The Americans proved that warfare is also about trucks, organization, determination, and the will to drive 20-hour shifts through the night so your fellow soldiers don't run out of gas. The Red Ball Express, 6,000 drivers, most of them black, most of them mocked and underestimated, delivering 12,500 tons of supplies daily and changing the course of World War II. German generals laughed at American logistics. The Red Ball Express had the last laugh, and it was delivered at 12,500 tons per day,